We are going to talk about the BRICS countries today. There is some huge developments happening with the BRICS and the BRICS Plus. Other countries want to join BRICS, form an alliance, and take over the world. Just kidding. But no, seriously, they are joining BRICS, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today and why that's important, because I have been focused on this for several months in the community, in Cryptonaires community, and it's good. It's fun to talk about out here with the rest of the world, okay? If you're not familiar with what the BRICS nations are, it's okay. So it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And so they formed this group earlier. It says in the early 2000s, have since experienced very different growth paths. It says over the past 2 decades, there's been an astonishing restructuring of global economic power. This has been driven primarily by the rise of China, to a lesser extent the BRICS countries more broadly, which is in addition to the East Asian giant encompasses Brazil, Russia, and South Africa. Excuse me. Let's just go a little bit lower down here. So what are the BRICS and why do they matter? At one level, the idea of the BRICS is confected. The former Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill coined the term BRIC in the early 2000s to describe the 4 fastest growing countries that at the turn of the millennium seem most likely to begin catching up to the West. Looking back, this notion appears quite problematic. Brazil's growth slowed dramatically around 2014 as it struggled with early deindustrialization. Russia was the erstwhile superpower. To describe it as rising, therefore and remains questionable, particularly as its industrial atrophied post-communist economy has stayed small in global terms. Even today, as the country mounts a majority of military offensive, its GDP is still barely half that of the UK, despite the population almost 3 times the size and the largest, most resource-rich territory on the planet. India's growth has been impressive, but its relative share of the global GDP has actually shrunk, and the economy is now around 1/5 the size of China. One author describes the pair comparatively as the crouching tiger or roaring dragon. South Africa is arguably not a rising power at all in global terms, and it was primarily tagged onto the grouping later for reasons of regional perspective. All right, so we understand what the countries are, okay? And let me show you this. So here's the GDP for these countries from 2020 to 2027 in US dollars. So China's in blue, India's in black. Can you go away, little friend? There you go. Brazil is in the white, Russia's in the red, and South Africa's in the green, okay? And so I'm just showing this, right? And so we come here, Saudi Arabia keen to join BRICS, right? Saudi Arabia is interested in joining BRICS group of the world's 5 most developing economies, as well as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, according to Russia's ambassador to the kingdom, Sergei Kozlov. The 5 BRICS nations, which currently account for 40% of the world's population and nearly a quarter of the world's GDP. Meanwhile, China and Russia-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a regional security bloc, includes major powers like India in its ranks. Saudi Arabia is sitting on, what, $25 trillion of the oil? They want to join BRICS, okay? They're not the only one. Egypt joins BRICS, a new development bank. Check this out. Egyptian President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi's cabinet ratified the agreement establishing the NDB and Egypt's accession document to the institution, which began operating in 2015 in Shanghai. From there, the NDB finances infrastructure and sustainable development projects in areas such as energy, transportation, water, communications, and health. Since 2016, the bank has invested in multiple projects, including US $7.2 billion in India alone. RT reported, recalling that Egypt expressed an interest in becoming an NDB member in July. Okay, and then we look here. Parliament approves agreement allows Egypt to join BRICS group new development bank, right? We just talked about that. And then Iran hopes for China's help in joining BRICS. So now you have Egypt, you have Iran, you have Saudi Arabia, and you have 20 some other countries that all want to join BRICS. Why is this important? Most of these countries, when you have Brazil, you have Russia, you have China, you have India, and you have South Africa. All 5 are pursuing different digital asset CBDCs or different things, right? China's got the digital yuan, India's got the digital rupee, Russia's got working on a digital ruble, and Saudi Arabia will probably digitize their currency, and I think it's the dirham, and trade oil in that. So all of these countries are going to bring all of these little bit smaller countries. Egypt is the largest country or state, I don't know what they call it in Africa. So Egypt has a lot to offer the BRICS nations. They also in 2015 found a huge pocket of gas and fuel in the Mediterranean Sea that they're going to start working on. It could be billions, if not trillions of dollars worth of fuel. So you have all of these different countries that are already starting to trade in between them. Saudi Arabia has gone on to say that they're going to stop using the US dollar in oil trade. So the OPEC agreement was that any oil traded on the planet was traded in US dollars. Because of the invasion by Russia into Ukraine and that war that's going on there, the United States and allies blocked Russia from accessing the SWIFT system, which is the correspondent banking system, and they actually froze billions and billions of dollars of Russia's funds. Other countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and all these other countries looked at that. And if I do something that NATO or the US doesn't like, they're going to block me out of my funds. So now they are figuring out different ways to trade oil, gas, gold, and that kind of stuff. And all of that is being digitized as we speak to trade in between each other. So it's a whole lot easier. It's a lot easier to do a digital transaction than putting a truckload of gold on a plane and flying it from one place to one place. Digitizing all of this value will allow them to bring more value not onto only blockchains, but allow them to trade in between their neighboring countries for a lot cheaper. I do think this is a really great thing. I'm really tired of the US trying to bully different countries into what they want to do. I think the US is slow with digital asset regulation. I think they're behind. I watched the banking committee. They just had a session in the Senate, and you have people there talking that they want to give all cryptos are securities, and the SEC should regulation over all the entire industry. Crypto is global, and what the UK and what Brazil and all these countries are using these technologies, they don't give a shit what the US says or what the SEC says. They're going to use these technologies because not only is it saving them money, but it's saving them time, right? They can transfer value in 3 to 5 seconds, whereas the SWIFT system, you have to wait days and maybe your money never gets there, right? And the US really needs to understand what situation they put themselves into. And it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican problem, it's an American problem. Either side, we're too busy fighting over this and that instead of helping set proper regulation and rules of the road so technology can flourish in the United States. So the innovation will happen outside of the United States, and the US will catch up whenever they decide to, but they're going to be at the back of the line. And all of these other great, amazing companies are going to the UAE, they're going to Singapore, they're going to Switzerland, they're going to, who knows, maybe Brazil, maybe China, to build instead of having to deal with the. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. Please share it with somebody you know. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.